Okay guys, first of all, Spadia is not just a YouTube channel. We have also digital products, physical products, which are going to help you about everything we talk about in these videos. You can find two links in the descriptions below. And now let's get back to the video you came here to actually watch.
Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are continuing on our discussions and we have another banger for you guys. This month is going to be month on nutrition. We have not talked much about that, but we are going to talk about all the underlying aspects of nutrition, not just in this episode, but over all of the episodes in this month in March. Now what I want to talk about first, and I've written this down for you guys, is that pretty much I'm well aware that nutrition is the most hotly debated topic. Lots of people have different opinions on what you should do, if you should have a keto diet, if you should be an omnivore or carnivore or whatever works better for you. We always see that people derive benefits from all of the approaches, but I think what we need to talk about the most and what is going to be focused is not on those aspects of nutrition, because we've been talking about calories, counting your macros in this case, checking how much you eat in terms of the carbs and anything else. That has been already talked about for a decade at least, but we are going to dive into specific reasons how and why food directly affects your mood, how you feel, and what you do because of the food you eat. So we are going to talk through those things in March, which is in this month, and it will be a completely and say novel look at how we might think and look at nutrition from this standpoint of view of both brain and body. Now I have one pretty good story for you guys in terms of what you might usually think of as the easiest example of what we are going to talk about. You might have a preconceived notion of people who go to McDonald's to be fat or overweight because of the food choices they make if they come to McDonald's often, or let's say any other fast food chain, but it's especially apparent for McDonald's. I think we have a stereotype for a man who is overweight who just basically indulges in hamburgers quite often from McDonald's. Now this isn't because that person made that choice consciously. We do make choices to go there, but what you need to realize that, okay, for first time I go there, it might be because of having friends who want to enjoy lunch. Okay, so you go to McDonald's maybe as a young kid. What that actually transpires though is that the food itself directly affects the neurocircuits in your brain and also the chemicals in your brain. I would just say that in this case, especially the food which contains there's lots of calories and there's sugars which are in there, it will raise your serotonin, which makes you less likely to move to achieve a particular goal. So you can think of it that if you eat McDonald's foods, you are less likely to move, and that, in that sense, makes you less likely to feel good about yourself, because we always know that exercise is very important. And the second thing is that it just makes you less likely to feel good about yourself, which means that you will be more likely to indulge again in foods which make you feel good, which is exactly what foods like hamburgers from McDonald's do. So this is why this particular notion of just food acting on your system as making you fatter, it's very much the wrong way to approach this, because the food directly affects your own brain and the chemicals inside of it to make you less likely to perform healthy actions on that end. This is what you have to realize, because the same people who go to McDonald's each day, it might not even be their choice anymore. It's just what their brain tells them to do, because that's the only way they can actually feel good about themselves. And those people, it's not anymore issue about the foods, but it's the issue about the brain, because what you tend to have to realize is that if we are able to actually alter their brain circuits on that end, they will be more likely to, for example, go out and exercise. And if there are many studies which show this, that if you go out and exercise, you are much less likely to then indulge in unhealthy foods than to, for example, do healthy foods. So if you exercise, you automatically make more healthy choices for your meals, And the other hand is also true, is that if you eat healthy meals, you are much more likely to exercise and, for example, even do cardio, because usually when we talk about exercise here, we talk about basically strength training or power training, basically in the gym. But you have to realize that every food you eat directly affects the brain at how you feel, your mood, and what you are going to do. So this is why you want to look at it this way, but we also need to explain how that happens, okay? This is the gist of the first episode we are making, and then we can go into different ways how you can actually approach this in the next episodes on that. But what needs to be outlined is that there are basically three pathways that we know of at the moment, based on the recent studies of how those effects can be seen in people just by eating the hamburgers, and, for example, then be more likely to exercise less and so on. So the first thing you have to realize is that brain and its neural pathways, which are basically connected pretty much throughout the entire body, so we just need to follow the way how you ingest food. So let's say, for example, this is just one way that when you ingest something into your mouth, you immediately have the taste receptors in there, which send information directly to your brain about what the food is most likely made up of. And this is, for example, you can see this in things, if you put something to your mouth which you wouldn't want to ingest, and you put it at the back of your throat or at the back of your tongue, you will immediately get a gagging reflex, because what that means is that your brain senses that this is something you wouldn't want to ingest, so it makes you to throw up. This is basically unconscious or involuntary, and you will always do this. So this is one of the ways that your brain immediately senses what the food is about. Now, I would just say one thing is that all the companies know this. What they will do is that they will purposely add sugars to their foods to basically improve the taste and to want you to eat more of the same thing. This has been discussed a lot of times, but because the neural pathways go directly up to your brain, which is basically your center to decide what you want to be doing for the next few times. This is also one of the reasons why a lot of companies just basically masks things with sugar and also salt. We can come back to salt in the episodes later on, but especially because of the sugar, because that basically makes you want to eat more of the same thing and to enjoy this particular food. So the first pathway already happens inside of your mouth. So we've talked about this example of the gagging reflex as well. So a lot of these things are unconscious and it's very hard to control them. So this is the first thing you have to be aware of, that the first pathway to prevent eating something you don't want to do is of course your mouth. But you then need to realize that this is the immediately first thing which directly affects your brain capacity to sense what you're eating. The second thing which we'll be talking about is once you actually ingest the food, it goes into your stomach, and what we have in there is that there are basically pathways which communicate exactly from your gut to your brain on what is the content of what you ate. This is usually studied and talked about more often in terms of the split between carbs, protein, and fat, and also which particular carbs, fats, and protein. So there are different types. For example, fats, omega-3s and omega-6s. I think everyone has heard about them being different. But basically, your gut sends signals to your brain about what the particular foods are. And the reason why we talk about this is that depending on what you ate and what was the content of that, also in terms of how many minerals and any other goodies were there, it's going to then basically make differences in terms of how much your insulin spikes, but also it's going to make a difference on how your brain responds with additional chemicals, not just insulin in that case. But there are large differences whether you eat a fatty meal versus something high in sugars in that end, or there is a lot of protein for you. It's going to completely change your behavior, and you can actually know this already as yourself, because what usually tends to happen is that if you eat sugary foods, you are more hungry and you are thinking about food a lot more. It doesn't have to happen for every sugary food you eat, but there are tons of different responses for you when you eat sugary foods versus when you eat something which is, let's say, fulfilling, which has also fiber in it. So we can talk about sugary foods also in terms of fruits, but usually you aren't that much craving for something else because there are also fibers in it. So all of these contents of what you just ate are sent directly to the brain, and then you basically have different chemical responses based on what you've eaten. Now, what we have to then realize is that the third, let's say, thing is that also depending on what you ate, the brain is going to know that, and it's going, even if it's going to be used as a fuel or used as a source as a fat for later storage. There are so many differences on that end of the spectrum and on how those things you've eaten will benefit your entire body. Let's say if you've eaten something with minerals, or if you've had no minerals for a long time, there are going to be differences between how your body uses what you've eaten, and this then directly affects also your behavior. We can also just talk about this in the sense that if you've eaten a lot of calories, you will automatically store them as fat if you don't use those. But in the other hand, if you've not eaten a lot, you will automatically be thinking about wanting to eat more perhaps, or trying to get a more fulfilling meal immediately in the next few hours, and it's going to alter your behavior, and you might not even be able to focus on work as much, but you'll be thinking about food, and it's going to perhaps make you want to go to the kitchen to prepare something else. So this is additional third pathway of after basically digesting the food and your brain knowing whether you want to eat more or less. But also the issue is that there are lots of foods which have different effects on this whole pathway of how it works, and it relates to one hormone, ghrelin. Now, we should be talking about this in the next few episodes as well, but what we all have to realize is that particularly certain proteins and fats are able to maintain your satiety very well, and this is why usually sugary foods spike, for example, insulin in that end, because when you eat sugary foods, those have usually been used as a fast fuel source, and fats and proteins were harder to come by, especially in the past few thousands of years. Now we don't have that issue, but this is the one thing you can take away as well, is that in terms of eating fats and proteins, those should be more helping you to be feeling full, but there are particular proteins and fats you need to be aware of down the line that can do that, and your body is trying to spot. Now, I think we have to then go back to the topic, which I want to just say that yes, we could be talking about calories, we could be talking about these foods you've ingested, but I think this is the one thing which he's not talked about pretty much the most, because I just want to think, and especially up at this point, where is the line we want to draw on which food is healthy or unhealthy for you. If we now understand that the food you eat directly affects your own mind and what choices you make in the next, even in the next day, in the next few days, well then there are two approaches you can take here. Is that it's not just the food you eat, but it's the food which directly you eat that affects your mind, which is going to matter to you, because if you want to be healthy, you might watch out for what the particular macros do, so you can basically educate yourself on proteins versus fats versus carbs and how they are usually used. This should be especially helpful in terms of sport athletes, because there the use, or let's say there's a more correct use of these macros than in the general world. I mean, even in the past, you might think about the fact, especially in Europe, because this has been my own experience, but we were basically educated, and we always had, for example, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe sometimes meals in between, and it has been the standard for a very long time. But this standard was most likely used because the food was more scarce, so you wanted to basically more spread it out because you had more time to, for example, find food, to prepare it. And in this era, there are particularly probably better ways to time your food intake. Not that they particularly affect too much or in any meaningful way the calorie burn, for example, but especially the food choices you make and then also the timing of those will affect how you feel, behave, and what you do in the particular hours or in the next few days of your life. So this is what we are going to be discussing over the next few episodes on that end, and I truly hope that this was a good intro for you guys, and I'm especially looking forward to the next ones because it's going to be banger. Bye guys.